You've checked everything. She's fed, nappy's clean, room temperature is fine, and she's still crying. You pick her up, she stops for a second, then starts again. You put her down. Worse. You try feeding. Not hungry. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, you think, why is she crying for absolutely no reason? There is always a reason. Your baby cannot cry for no reason. It's neurologically impossible. What's happening is she has something to say and 0 words to say it with. Today we're covering the 7 most common reasons. And by the end of this video, 2 a.m. will never feel the same again. When our daughter was around 4 months old, she woke at 2 a.m., crying in a way we hadn't heard before. We did everything. Fed her, changed her, rocked her, checked the temperature 3 times. 40 minutes. Still going. I remember standing in the nursery thinking, I genuinely don't know what you need. That feeling was worse than the tiredness. What nobody told us was that what she was experiencing had a name, a scientific explanation, and was completely normal. That's what this video is. Before the 7 reasons, one thing that changes everything. Your baby's crying is not a problem. It is a language. The most sophisticated communication tool a baby has in their first year. Here's why. The parts of the brain responsible for language, gesture, and expression are the last to develop, but the part that signals distress and calls for help, fully operational from day 1. When your baby cries, their brain has identified a need and activated the only communication channel available to them. The problem was never that your baby cries for no reason. The problem is nobody gave you the translation guide. Until now. Reason 1. And this one surprises almost every parent. Your baby is crying because she's overtired. Not tired, overtired. There's a difference. When a baby misses their sleep window, the brain releases cortisol, a stress hormone that actively makes it harder to fall asleep. It creates a loop. Too tired to settle, stress hormone preventing sleep, crying from the frustration of both. The counterintuitive part, an overtired baby looks wired. Eyes wide open, full of energy, nothing like what you'd expect. So at midnight, when your baby is wide-eyed and screaming, and you've checked everything, look at the clock. How long have they been awake? If it's past the wake window for their age, that cortisol loop is most likely your answer. Reason 2, overstimulation. A baby's nervous system receives everything at full volume. Sounds, lights, movement, temperature, voices, all of it simultaneously with no filter. Adults have developed the ability to tune things out. A baby cannot do this yet. When sensory input hits its limit, the only release valve is crying. The specific pattern here is a cry that comes on suddenly in what seems like a perfectly normal situation. You're at a family gathering, everyone is happy, and suddenly your baby is screaming. This is why. Not because anything is wrong, because everything is too much. The fix is almost always the same. Remove the stimulation. Somewhere quiet and dim. Lower your voice to almost a whisper. Most overstimulation crying resolves within 5 to 10 minutes. Reason 3 has an actual name in pediatric research. The witching hour. If your baby cries inconsolably every evening, usually between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m., for weeks at a time, and nothing you do helps for more than a few minutes, that's what this is. It affects between 40 and 80% of babies, most commonly between weeks 2 and 12. The most supported explanation is a combination of nervous system overload from a full day of sensory input, gut discomfort from an immature digestive system, and a peak in brain developmental activity that tends to happen in the evening hours. What the research agrees on is this. It is not caused by bad parenting. It is a developmental phase. And it ends. Almost always by around 12 weeks. If you're in it right now, you are simply in the hardest weeks. And they end. Reason 4. Developmental leaps. Every few weeks, your baby's brain goes through a period of rapid development. New neural connections forming at a pace that won't be matched again until adolescence. And it is overwhelming. Genuinely, neurologically overwhelming. During a leap, your baby becomes clingier, more unsettled, more easily upset. Sleep that was working stops. Feeding patterns change. And they cry more, often a lot more. The most intense leaps happen around weeks 5, 8, 12, 19, and 26. The reassurance. Leaps are temporary. The crying peaks for a few days, then resolves as the new ability settles in. Here is the line I want you to remember. The distress and the development are the same event. The baby who cried inexplicably for 3 days comes out the other side doing something she couldn't do before. Reason 5. Pain that's invisible to you. The most common is trapped gas. An immature gut processes air differently. Trapped gas causes real cramping pain. The cry pattern is usually a sudden, high-pitched cry, legs pulling up toward the chest, a brief pause, then another cry. The cyclical pattern is the tell. Teething discomfort often starts weeks before anything is visible. A baby who is crying and also chewing their fist, drooling more than usual, or pulling at their ear is very likely experiencing teething pain. Ear infections cause crying that peaks at night when lying flat changes the pressure. If crying is significantly worse horizontal and better upright, especially after a recent cold, worth a call to your doctor. Quick check for all of these. Place the back of your hand on the back of their neck, not the hands or feet. The neck tells you temperature accurately. Pain-based crying tends to be more urgent, higher pitched, and harder to distract from than other types. With time, you'll recognize it. Reason 6, the simplest and the most important. Your baby is crying because they need you, not because something is wrong, not because they're in pain. Simply because they need the physical presence of their person. Human babies are born with what developmental psychologists call proximity-seeking behavior, one of the most deeply embedded biological drives a human has. The need to be close to a safe caregiver, particularly in the dark, particularly when external stimulation drops and internal awareness increases. When your baby wakes at midnight with no other identifiable cause, this is often what's happening. This is not manipulation. A baby under 12 months does not have the cognitive development to manipulate. And responding to this cry, picking them up, holding them close, does not create a spoiled baby. The research is consistent. Responsive caregiving in year 1 builds the neurological foundation for independent, secure children. You cannot give a baby too much reassurance in year 1. Reason 7. The one I personally needed someone to explain. The middle of the night cry with no obvious cause. Baby has been asleep for hours. Nothing has changed. Not due a feed, not teething, not sick. And they wake up crying in a way that seems genuinely distressed. What is most likely happening is something during REM sleep. Babies spend up to 50% of their sleep time in REM. During that time, the brain is extraordinarily active, processing the day's experiences, building new neural connections, and sometimes generating internal states overwhelming enough to activate the distress response. Not a nightmare in the adult sense, but a developing brain experiencing something it doesn't yet know how to process quietly. The response is simple. They need to know you're there. A hand on the chest, your voice at low volume, your presence. Most middle-of-the-night cries of this type resolve within 2 to 4 minutes of a calm response. You don't always need to pick them up. Sometimes just knowing you're there is the entire answer. So how do you actually use this at midnight on 3 hours of sleep? 3 things. First, pause 10 seconds before responding, not to leave them crying. To take one breath, listen to the cry, and identify which type it is. High-pitched escalating, overtiredness or pain. Sudden onset, overstimulation. Cyclical, wind. Middle of the night with no pattern, proximity or REM. Second, do one thing at a time. The instinct is to do everything simultaneously. Pick up, feed, rock, change, check temperature. This adds sensory input to a baby who may already be overwhelmed. Pick up first. If that helps, great. If not after 2 minutes, try the next thing. Methodical beats frantic every time. Third, regulate yourself first. This sounds impossible at 3 a.m., but research on parent-infant co-regulation is clear. A baby's nervous system responds directly to the caregivers. An anxious parent amplifies distress. A calm parent, even if calm is something you have to perform for 30 seconds before you feel it, helps the baby regulate faster. Slow your breathing. Drop your shoulders. Your baby feels all of it. When our daughter had that 3 a.m. episode I told you about at the start, what eventually settled her was the simplest thing. I stopped trying to fix it. I sat on the nursery floor, held her against my chest, and just stayed there. She stopped crying within 4 minutes. Not because I found the right technique, because I stopped being anxious about finding the right technique. My nervous system settled. Hers followed. Your baby is not crying to frustrate you. They are crying because they have something to say and no words yet. And they chose you, specifically you, to say it to. Because you are their safe person. That's not a burden, that's attachment. And it's the most important thing you can build in year 1. You don't need all the answers at 3 a.m. You just need to be there. And you already are. If this helped, subscribe to Raising Tiny Minds. Every week, we take one confusing thing about your baby's brain and explain what's actually happening. See you in the next one.